This is for Coby Ricketts. Um, his Facebook post. He wants some critiques on it. Okay, so let me just set this up here. So the first thing that I would say right off the bat is I think you've got the idea for them down, but the problem you're having is you're not understanding the lighting. And so what I mean by that is when we use photo references from most of these like professional photographers where they've got, the beautiful women, blah blah blah. It's done either with flash photography or daylight, and so you don't really get a lot of your form in there. So the first thing that I would say is start getting a little bit more form in there, and what that means is um, you've got this bright sky background here, and I would start by adding in a little bit more highlights into the skin where the skin is actually contacting the sun, and that's going to kind of give you a better idea of the way your lighting and solution will work. So the problem is the main problem I see is that you're not developing your form, and your lighting is different from this, because what this is flash photography, and so all the lighting is straight on, whereas you want daylight photography. So at this point you're going to see much more darks in the bottom sides of things, um, and under here, under here, under here, and depending on which way the lighting is coming from, you'd probably see more behind underneath the chin here, behind the head. So you want to get your lighting down, and I think that's the biggest issue. You understand the form, but the problem is by not getting the lighting the same as the direction that you're going, you're coming up kind of short. So I would continually, develop your shadows, possibly get different reference where it's side lit, and I think that's going to make it one, a lot more dynamic, and two, a lot more interesting. Let me just kind of multiply this layer. So that's going to kind of help you out as well. So the other aspect that I see is that you have a lot of armor and stuff on here, but you're really not defining it. So what I'm talking about is if her shoulder comes down here like this, like that, your armor is like right tight up against it. And in all reality, when you're doing armor, especially something like this, it's going to be significantly bigger. So on this case, it would be, I would say, this piece here would be significantly bigger, probably something along the lines of that, where um, it's actually hanging out of the off the character. It's on the character. It's off the character. So um, you have much more depth in there. So the metal bra tends to be fine. What I would say to do is, because there's no form change in metal, you want to adjust the breast accordingly. So if she's got larger breasts, they're going to pop out a little bit more. There'll be and it'll be subtle, but there'll be a slight shadow. There'll be a slight shadow here, and then much more. Let me grab a light here. Much more light on this side here, and it's just the metal does not give to the skin, so I would pay attention to that. You'll also get that underneath the breasts, and so on and so forth. The next thing is the hands. They're very tiny, especially since they're gauntlets, and so again, you want to go in here, and I would make these gauntlets significantly bigger. because they have to not only fit on the skin, but something along the lines of like this. This here doesn't feel right, and the reason it doesn't feel right is because your character, um, the form of the hand, so your hand comes here and the knuckles come here. Now, if that's true, this would be just slightly bent a little bit. So you get kind of the wrist bend here. And then your thumb is if you want your thumb to go behind it, you need to accent that more. That being the case, I would again make this bigger, bulkier, wider, because if you look at the jewelry and stuff like that on, that women wear, it's significantly, it's got to cover the entire finger, so the just needs to be thicker. Again, depending on how tight this is, it looks like it's just sitting on there. What you want to do instead is create a little bit more definition where it's tighter to the skin and then it comes out. Same thing here, you want that little bit of, it's almost like a bubble, if that's tight, and drawn out. The other thing too is what's your cloth. Your cloth should come around and have depth to it. Should have some thickness onto it. So that's something that I would say right off the bat there too. The next thing, and again, keep your shadows in kind of um, that same aspect, because a lot of what you're doing doesn't really have that form that you really want to develop. Um, you know the darkness of things overlapping, the shadow here of the hand, and even though it's subtle, oops, I don't want to get that. Let's undo that. Even though it's subtle, um, you can start developing that. The other thing too is start getting in some of your highlights. So you'll have a little bit of a highlight in here and almost a little bit of a highlight in here. And I probably want to do something like this reflection tone here. And that's basically from the skin reflecting on itself. Same thing here and same thing here. It's not as bright as this, but a lot more subtle. But you want that little bit of rim light where your skin is coming together. The other thing is, and I know you didn't get to the hair too much, but give the hair volume and depth, just by adding a little bit more color to it, or highlight to it. You'll get a lot more interesting hair. Same thing over here. Get that depth in where the sky tone is following through. Okay, and you're doing a good job here with the metal. However, I think the big thing is you want to probably have more, if your light is from up here, you want to have much more brightness where that metal is, or where those gems are glowing. Again, where the metal and the hand is reflecting, even though it's not, doesn't need to be super bright, those types of things are going to make a huge difference, especially when you add in depth of, the character here. And again, I would get your shadow depth in here a little bit darker. Same thing over here, just a little bit darker. And I think that's going to kind of help you out significantly, by changing that aspect. So again, fix the hands, get the armor a little bit larger, decide on your lighting, because right now it's that flash forward photography, but you have the skylight, which is top lit and probably from this direction. Another thing you might want to do, and this is just something that I would say, is you want to change your landscape, because right now your landscape is very one-sided, very solid color crossed, and if you just simply change something like this, maybe put a little bit over here, possibly even darkening. And now you see how you're starting to get a little bit more interesting of a tonal value there. Things are popping out a little bit more. She's not so, what's the word I want to say? She's not so invested into the scene, whereas she's a separate element. And so that's something that you want to do. What I would do is when you start colorizing it, that's when you add in your darker tones, and that just the subtle tones of like your blues for your shadows and things like that will really push the scene itself. So kind of watch that out, and I think that'll help you out. And then if you push your opposite values, so if we do like the orange, um, something like that, that's going to give you, I think, a better tonal value range. So, all right, I hope that helps.